I can't wear my glasses.
Why?
Because everything blurs. Okay, I'm gonna.
It looks okay for us.
Okay, maybe you could. Yeah, but I can't.
Bring it closer.
Yeah, can you just bring it a little closer? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's see, did I? No, okay, okay. Okay, no, I'm okay. No, so we're on now?
Yeah.
The people are out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
120 people.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I greet you. This is Wednesday night, December 23rd. And, okay. I'm sorry. So, after hearing Kozan's talk last week, I got very excited and I just poured out of me a whole talk with all kinds of connections and understandings. Oh, it's moving differently than I'm moving, Noah. Well, it's okay. Let's just go with it. And I was very excited. And then I wrote it all down. I was going to look at it afterwards. I still want to share it with you. But before I do, I need to say something because otherwise I'm overlooking something important that happened to me. Friday, I got a phone call that my dear friend Elaine Cadets, her daughter was on the phone and sobbing and said, "Mommy left us." And it's an old college friend that nobody in New Mexico or in my life for the last 30 years even knew about. And she died on Wednesday, a week today. And I hadn't seen her in 8 years. And she called me this summer and we talked for 2 hours and it was a wonderful talk. And then thank God or thank somebody that on Thanksgiving morning, I just out of the blue called her and she answered and she said, "Nat, I just was in the hospital for 6 weeks." And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "I got my 3rd cancer." So she had breast cancer, then she had kidney cancer and her kidney was removed. And then this last one in September, she got lymphoma. And I guess she didn't last. And when I spoke to her, she was so positive. I said, "Elaine, if COVID is still around in this summer, I'm coming out, even if I have to just drive to Boston." And we didn't make it. And I didn't stop thinking of her since Thanksgiving. And I'm amazed how since Friday, I have been convulsively crying, like from my root, as though my mother or father died. And if I'm not crying, I'm in a fog. Yesterday, I knew I had to go someplace at noon. It took me all the way till noon to figure out how to put on my socks and brush my teeth. I was in a complete fog. And maybe that's how I should start, is to tell you that we don't know what we carry and who we love so much that they're with us all the time. And they're so important. And sometimes they don't come to consciousness for long periods, but they're carrying us. Noah, there's a weird, I'm moving and it's moving differently than me. Do you see? Am I wrong or is this me? Or am I that slow? No, my mouth isn't the same, is it? No, it's not talking this.
Just to look at the camera, not at the screen.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, please excuse us. I'm a moron when it comes to computers. And Noah has Kigaku is just the best. And I've gotten to be in the Zendo, which I haven't been in a long time. So excuse us for a few minutes for me to orient. So it really helps me to tell you about Elaine, because that came out, and actually it fits in with what I wanted to talk about, but I'd rather her not fit in. That something from outside you comes and not only wakes you up, you're always connected to it. But something has to happen. Unfortunately, in this case, someone has to die to shatter my comfortable life. And I've been thinking of an eggplant lately, my comfortable eggplant. And you realize we carry so much, not as a burden, but we're moving with the clouds and the sky. And even though I'm not in the Zendo, this Zendo is always in me, and the Zendo is always in me. So how I wanted to start with is to tell you that last year in the winter, in December, that was a little before COVID, I started to do Tai Chi in the mornings, 3 mornings a week, very early, very cold, with this wonderful Tai Chi teacher or Qigong teacher. I'm not sure what we're doing. I don't really care. And we do it 3 times a week, and I'm there very early, and I never missed. And then suddenly, and I didn't even know what I was doing or why I was doing it. And then May, suddenly I heard a little voice, why am I doing this? I don't really want to do it. Okay, I'm going to quit. So one day I showed up and I said, I'm not doing it anymore, and thank you so much, but I just don't want to do it, which actually was wonderful. I just trusted that. I didn't make a big deal about it. Come December this year, last week, I guess a lot happened last week. Last Wednesday, the day that Elaine died, I didn't know she died yet, like a dragon smelling the water. The whole time I quit, I never thought about it again. It rose in me, and there I was. I got up 7, I'm there, and I've been there ever since. And I know I'm going to be there. I can't promise how long, but it rose in me, and I just went. I didn't have any thought. I didn't know why. I wanted it, like an animal wanting a hamburger. I just wanted it, and it rose in me. So I went. Okay, so you're going to keep following me. The next thing that happened in that same way, or it didn't happen to me, I was talking to my friend Eddie. We meet once a week during the COVID, and we sit far away outside from each other, and we talk for 2 hours. And I'm a terrible sleeper. I mean, I can go for years without hardly sleeping. It's not a lot of fun, but you grow very fascinated by sleep. And so Eddie's son has trouble sleeping. Nothing like me, but you meet anyone or hear someone who doesn't sleep, I'm always eager to talk to them, because this has been such a singular experience. So Eddie said to me, he said, I sleep. He said, sometimes though, I'll lie down and I'll think, I'm not at all tired. I'll never fall asleep. And he said the next thing he knows, it's the morning, and he slept all night. I said, really? How did you do that? That's fantastic. And my partner is a great sleeper. You could hang her upside down by a meat hook in a freezer, and she would be fast asleep. No problem. So then Eddie said, but sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'll be up for an hour. And I'll say, oh, and I said, oh, does that upset you? Are you nervous you're not going to fall back to sleep? He says, no. He said, and then I just fall asleep. I realized he doesn't fight sleep. He doesn't have, and he trusts himself, or he trusts that part of him that goes over, goes someplace else. Now, we usually say to the unconscious, but who knows where they go? There's a big world out there. Who knows where we go? Sometimes I study my partner sleeping. Where does she go? It seems like she's swimming in oceans. She's far out there, but she's right there. And I try to imitate her, how she sits and how she lies and how she breathes, but to no avail. And I told Eddie, I found this book. It's a fantastic book, but I can't read it because it's about a woman, Samantha Harvey, a year of not sleeping. And so when I start reading it, it's called The Shapeless Unease. And when I start reading it, it even makes me more scared about sleep. But I want to read you this one line that really captures it. Because for Eddie, I'm using Eddie as an example, he can move easily in and out. Waking up, he doesn't freeze there, and then he rolls over to the other side to sleep. It's smooth. For me, I've created a jagged line, and I can't get over. So this is from this book called The Shapeless Unease, and the pictures are perfect. It's of a tiger, kind of lost and crazy. This one sentence I want to read you. The attaining of sleep long ago left the realm of a natural act and entered that of black magic. For those who can't sleep, it is like black magic. How do you get over there? So I don't know if some of you have experienced that, but that's what happens. And then I want to tell you, I was studying with an acupuncturist. I went to an acupuncturist for twice a week a few months ago. And I really hit it off with him. And he told me this amazing story. He said that he was taking a Tai Chi class, but it was very intensive study. They didn't just do Tai Chi in the park. They had a classroom, and they met, I think they met 5 days a week. And it was very, very intensive for a few months. And the teacher, he was a Chinese master, and he would assign them writing assignments so that they could really understand what was going on. And when they would come into class, they'd have to read. And one of the women, it was her turn to read, and she stopped. She didn't read. She just said, I don't want to read. She said, all I do is complain. I sit down to write, and I just think I can't do it, and I sit down, and I'm writing, but all it is complaining. And the Tai Chi master said, you're upset because you think that's all that's happening. And he said, the whole class of 15 students, their mouths fell open, and they didn't know what to say. For 15 minutes, he said, it was completely silent. You think that's all that's happening. So then let's think about Zazen. And that is what happens with Zazen. We go to the cushion, or I should talk about me, or especially in the old days. I'd go to the cushion and I'd sit Zazen, I'd get in the position, and I wasn't doing Zazen. I was worrying or grabbing something, or I was hungry, or I wanted to get enlightened, or I just like sleep. I didn't know how to do it. And the teacher, I'm talking about when I was young, and I struggled. I was just trying, not like when I didn't let it rise up like the Tai Chi. I was fighting it. I was trying, I was hungry, and then once in a while I'd settle down and I'd be with my breath. for a minute, I'd think, Nat, why don't you try your breath? And that was too scary, so I went off again. And often, I think I've told this before, but I still can't get over it. Maybe someone has the answer for me. If it was sesshin, for at least an hour, the sesshin, in my mind, I would make a pot roast. I'd cut up the onions, I'd chop up carrots, and I'd make a pot roast. I never cooked a pot roast. When the sesshin was over, I never made a pot roast, but I eagerly created a pot roast. But it's the same as the Tai Chi master who said, that's all you think is happening. So we're sitting and we're complaining and our knees hurt and we're miserable, but as simultaneously, there's a very big world going on. But we don't connect with it. There's a tremendous gap between our mind and, I hate to say big mind because that creates our small mind and our big mind. It's all interconnected. But I'm only connected with this eggplant in my head that's chattering all the time and doesn't notice anything else, doesn't notice how deeply I'm connected with Elaine, doesn't notice that the months I didn't do Tai Chi, I was connected to Tai Chi. That I live down the road, but I'm connected here. That it's all going on simultaneously. And then, once in a while, just like you conk out and fall asleep, it's odd to use sleep as the example when we're always talking about awakening and waking up. But I don't think it's any different. Suddenly, someone knows how to fall over into that other place. That other place that has to do with life and death, the vastness and the stars and the constellations. We fall over into it, and we don't know how we got there. And this really is what Dogen talks about over and over again. And what I love about Dogen, he's a writer. So he keeps trying to explain it different ways. But what he's talking about is, in a way, falling over and coming back. Because you can't just be out there asleep or with the constellations. You have to brush your teeth. You have to drink a cup of coffee. Oh, Roshi Joan makes good coffee. I just thought of that. So I almost can explain it easier with writing, but I always have, my front is writing, but at my back is Zazen. And I usually, in some ways, it's easier for me to explain the writing, but that is going on too. So with writing, you eventually, writing does writing, and you get out of the way. And it just pours through you, your own individual details, but they're coming through you. And that's when it's really alive. Writing does writing, and you fade out. Now, what's tricky, after you're done, you had an activity, you were keeping your hand moving, and you have a product. Maybe not the great American novel, but you have writing on a page. Zazen is even more daring. Zazen does Zazen. And you don't even have an activity. We're all just sitting still. And Zazen does Zazen. That's even scarier because there's nothing. There's no product. There's nothing. You are the product, but you don't know it when Zazen does Zazen. So I wanted to share that, and I wanted to tell you not to worry. If you're worried on the Zafu, worry a little bit, but don't get carried away with it. Be hungry a little bit, but know that behind us is a really big world. And if we're lucky, sometimes we step over. But eventually it's knitting them together. Back and forth, back and forth. So I hope that helps a little. I know it's before, for a lot of you, Christmas, or not Christmas because of COVID, or not Christmas because there's Hanukkah, or because you're Muslim, or you don't care. You know, there's many things going on. But it's very intense right now with what's going on in the world. There's tremendous suffering. If we can remember, like sleep, there's another side. We might not even see it, but we're carrying it. Just like I carried Elaine. I'm carrying Elaine now in a different dimension. So I thought what I would do is today I'm going to read you some haiku, which actually plays with both. It used words and images to create space in your mind. And it was just today I finally saw the book, which is dedicated to, I will read you the dedication actually. It's a beautiful book, isn't it? They did a great job. 3 simple lines. And I'm going to read you the dedication because it's such an honor. It just came out. For Upaya Zen Center, where haiku blooms every February. Every February for 7 years, Roshi Joan is a very good sport. And I brought up the idea years ago. I said, let's do a haiku weekend. And I don't think she knew that much about haiku except what you learn in grammar school. She's making a face at me. What you learn in grammar school, 5, 7, 5, and those syllables. So, but she was a very good sport, and she said, okay. And the first year, Kaz Tanahashi, Joan, Roshi Joan, and me, we taught it. And I think we taught Basho, and we had 24 students. And I said, let's do it again, because I knew that it would build. And then we've done it now 7 years, and we pulled Clark Strand in. And we went really deep, and we're doing it again this February. So you're all welcome to come, but that's where when I say Upaya Zen Center, where haiku blooms every February. Then there's a space, and for Roshi Joan Halifax, Upaya's founding teacher and my good friend. Thank you, Joan. So for being such a good sport. And she goes along if you have some idea. She says, okay, let's do it. It's kind of wonderful. So I thought I would read you some of the haiku, and you can just relax. And it really brings us out of ourselves into a bigger space, and maybe sometimes into a deeper suffering. But it's not just our suffering. It's not as sticky. So I'll read you a few. This is by Issa, very beloved in Japan. It was in the 17th century. And he had a really hard life, very hard life. His wife died. He was very cruel mother-in-law. His mother died when he was 4, and it goes on. And at the same time, he continued writing haiku right till the end. And that's what you read, one after the other. whatever their lives are, their personal lives, they don't cut it out, but they keep going side by side or braided together. And that's the nutrition. So this is one by Isa. Dear, dear, what a fat, happy face it has, this peony. The evening cool, knowing the bell is tolling our life away. The evening cool, knowing the bell is tolling our life away. That haiku was so helpful because when I hear the bell, it's so big for me. And this explained it. You know, one of the things I think now while I'm grieving Elaine is I'll reach for salt and I'll say, Elaine is never going to salt anything again. Or I put my foot on the brake this morning driving and I thought, she'll never put her foot on the brake again. So it wakes us up how precious it is to be alive. That I want to say, how does that last line go? And the evening chant. I know a different translation. I beg to urge you, everyone, life and death is a great matter. And then it goes on. And the way I heard it translated originally is, do not waste your life. But what I love, because this is all about language, Taz Kanahashi translated it, do not squander your life. Can you feel that? The difference? Waste, you feel like you could slide off it. Squander, it's 2 syllables. It comes right back at you. Don't throw away your life. Like, shredding cheese. Do not squander your life. So what do you do when the evening bell tolls? Stop a moment and listen. I have 15 books out. It doesn't help. Does it help with Elaine? No. It gave me an activity. It was nice. I liked it. But that isn't what this is all about. To squander your life, do not squander it. Your life, and use that life to help, but also to be with it. That life. Okay, I'm going to read you some more. Shut up and read some more. Oh, this is the one that started the whole thing for me when I read this. And I didn't even know Busan. There was Basho, and then years after Basho died, Busan was born and became a haiku writer and considered Basho his master. Considered Basho his master, yeah. And I read this by Busan, and that is why I went on a trip with Roshi Joan and Kaz Tanahashi in 2012. I'd already been to Japan on my own, but I was going to look for Busan's grave to say thank you for this singular haiku that I read soon after my teacher died. Ah, grief and sadness. The fishing line trembles in the autumn breeze. You see how subtle that is? Let's do it again. Ah, grief and sadness. The fishing line trembles in the autumn breeze. I want that single haiku that I read at many, many years ago. It took me a while. It took me probably 2 decades. And then I heard about this trip and I thought, I'm going to go find Busan's grave and thank him. And I talk about that in here. And some haiku can do that for you. Anything you fall deeply in love with. But then we're also deeply in love with things we don't know, and we carry them. I'll read you some more. You know, when I read this one to Kaz Tanahashi, he said, too sentimental. It probably was that, grief and sadness. You don't say that. Okay, I'm going to just read you a few. Oh, here's another Isa. Isa, in the end, he lost a wife and a daughter, children, 3 children, but a daughter that he loved very much. In a dream, my daughter lifts a melon to her soft cheek. There's everything in there. There's the dream, the melon, the cheek, the daughter who's passed on, and the father who's wishing. It's all of that. It's not separate. In a dream, my daughter lifts a melon to her soft cheek. Oh, this one, well, I'll just read it. I love it. Sitting on her eggs, the chicken admires the peony. Sitting on her eggs, the chicken admires the peony. Isa. Here's one by Roshi Joan. Now, what I love, she sent it to me in an email. She was up at the refuge in the winter. This was a few years ago. The refuge is this land that called Prajna that's connected to Upaya, and it's way out there in the mountains. And Joan often goes there, and she sent me this haiku. And then I put it in the book, and when she read it in the book, she said, I wrote that? And you could see she was very happy. She said, I don't remember writing that. Because that's a great example of closing the gap between who you are and who you think you are. And when you're not thinking and when you're thinking, and it can come together. So I'll read it to you. It was a beautiful haiku. Snowstorm at the refuge, strange joy to see the world disappear. Nice. That's what I was talking about. You know, we disappear in Zazen, and then our brain, for some reason, our eggplant brain grabs it. Oh, am I getting enlightened? What is this? Whoa, I got to go grocery shopping after this. I bet there's a sale on tuna fish. And then I come back. And wait, where did it go? I wrote that. Snowstorm at the refuge. Strange joy to see the world disappear. Joan Halifax. Oh, Shiki. Just go get this book. Not because it's my book and I want you to buy it, which would be helpful for me to publish more books, but this story of Shiki, he died at 35. He coughed his first blood when he was 13. He had TB, and he became a great haiku writer. Great determination, and he had many disciples. I want to tell you this. When people who were haiku writers, they would often change their names like we did as hippies, or people are changing their names to Japanese names after they take vows here. It sort of undresses us. I'm so used to being Natalie. What if someone keeps calling me, it's not a very good Dharma name, Kanpo. but it's a different identity. It's not so solid. So Basho, his students, his disciples used to make huts for him, and he would wander a lot, like a wandering Jew, but he wasn't Jewish. And he would sit in the hut, and his one of his students planted a banana tree nearby, and it grew beautifully. And he was about to go on another pilgrimage, and he came out of the hut and turned around, saw the banana tree, and he said, "From now on, my name is Basho," which means banana tree. And Isa, he named himself Isa, means a cup of tea. And Shiki, who died so young and had TB and coughed blood, Shiki, I think it's a cuckoo bird. It says so, I don't remember what kind of bird, that is said that when he sings, he coughs blood. So it was perfect for Shiki. I love Shiki. Okay, I'll read you. Cherries blooming, people I remember, all far away. Cherries blooming, people I remember, all far away. Spring departing, no wife, no child in this grass hut. Stifling heat, tangled in confusion, I listen to thunder. Stifling heat, tangled in confusion, I listen to thunder. Ocean and mountains, way beyond 17 syllables. I could go on and on. They're so wonderful. The two plum trees, I love their blooming, one early, one later. Haven't you seen that? There's two trees and one is early and one's later. He knew to name it. So I'll always know that. And then this one, I go, you stay, 2 autumns. I go, you stay, 2 autumns. In an anthology, they attribute that poem to Busan. But I showed it to Kaz and I said, I don't think so. It sounds like Shiki. And Kaz looked at it and said, it could be Shiki. It could be Busan. Let's not find out. Let's hang out in the mystery. Oh. And then I discovered a wonderful woman writer, Chioni. I knew there were great women writers, and she had disciples, and Busan at first, was strutting and said she's just a woman writer. And then finally he surrendered after a few years and said, Chioni, would you mind writing the introduction to my book of haiku? And she just kept practicing. She had women disciples. There was one woman very close to her who stayed and took care of her as she was dying. I'll read you a few of Chioni. This one, of course, is my favorite, and it was her way, and she practiced. They all practice the path, the way of haiku, like someone else practices the way of Zen, or the way of writing, or the way of tennis. Okay. Clear water, no front, no back. Clear water, no front, no back. Change of kimono, showing only her back to the blossom's fragrance. I'll read it again. I never heard that from Basho. Change of kimono, showing only her back to the blossom's fragrance. A whole different flavor. And at first you think 3 lines, you don't know who wrote what, but you get to learn and you know this one's this person. They become people to you with details. Woman's desire, deeply rooted, the wild violets. Woman's desire, deeply rooted, the wild violets. And then I'm just going to end. You know, they all wrote death poems. Often Zen masters at their deathbeds, he or she would write a poem that expresses that moment right before they let go. And haiku writers and poets often do too. And this one was Busan's. And there's some very famous ones. Basho's is very famous, but Busan's I really had to dig out. But it feels very peaceful. I want to read it to you. With white plum blossoms, these nights to the faint light of dawn are turning. I'll read it again. With white plum blossoms, these nights to the faint light of dawn are turning. Wow. Sleep or not sleep on that one. So we have just a few more minutes, and I don't know if anyone wants to say anything. Joan is here, Roshi Joan. Oh, this is the first time I physically have seen her in a long time. She looks beautiful and well rested, and so I don't know how this would work, Noah, or we could just sit.
You can ask people to put their question in the chat box.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a name story for Chioni?
Is there a main story?
A name.
Oh, a name. I think that's a good question. I realize I'm not sure of Busan and I'm not sure of Chioni. Chioni, that might be the name she gave herself, but I couldn't find it. There's only one book in English on Chioni and it's out of print, but it doesn't say in there. All of you at Christmas, what would you give your name? What would your true name be? Kanpo.
What does it mean, Nat?
It means magnanimous mind.
Good name.
One who carries oneself and others with magnanimous mind. I have other names, but that was my first name. I actually, Kozan is my priest name. Yeah. Any other questions?
Is there anything in the book that you left out?
Oh, Roshi Joan is very tricky. It's not enough that I dedicate the book to her. She said, is there anything in the book that I left out? The first thing that came to me was my whole heart and mind. When I was writing it, I was in there really struggling how to put all that 2 trips and everything else together. But now it's a book and I can hand it on and my heart and mind are here. I kept it somehow, luckily. I didn't give it away. Gikaku
Do you have any of your haiku in there?
is one of my haiku. Funny you should ask. You know, when I was writing the book, I wasn't interested in writing haiku. I wanted to learn about the way of haiku, in a way to substantiate that I've spent my life doing the way of writing. But I knew I had to do a few haiku. So I'll read you one that I did. Even Basho, right up to death, longed for a haiku. Even Basho, right up to death, longed for a haiku. And then at the end, in the epilogue, which surprised me, I hadn't planned to do an epilogue like this, but it's actually an homage to Allen Ginsberg, who I studied with and then taught with. Spring wind blossomed you into another world. This was when he died. Spring wind blossomed you into another world. Okay, you want to ask one? Oh, I just want to say one thing. Like Roshi Joan, you should just write them, make attempt, and then 2 months later read them, because there's such a gap. You don't know what you've been doing. Okay, what's the question?
What do people do when they do the way of haiku?
What do people do when they do the way of haiku? Well, they practice a lot of haiku, and usually like they go on long journeys, walking journeys in nature for a long time, usually with a backpack, and you just keep walking and opening up to nature and finding a haiku. Shiki made it more modern, so you could add your toothbrush into a haiku, or objects that are not human or that are human or that are connected to just objects. But there's a connection to nature, and it's a care for things. And the difference is between brushing your teeth as a habit or brushing your teeth as a practice. We brush our teeth usually every morning, but as a habit or a practice is very different. And so they're not doing haiku just to grab a good haiku, though right to the end, many of them are writing haiku. They want it bad. But that's the weaving, bringing heaven down here and swallowing it. What's the other question?
How did you structure the book?
Oh, that must be one of my students, because they know I care about structure. It seemed like a crazy, I didn't know. I have chapters that are just about Shiki, a whole chapter about Isa. Eventually I wrote these chapters. I had no idea where I was going. And in the end, I wove them together. I braided them, but not just with 2 strands. I had like 6 strands, and I was braiding it like a challah. You know, a challah, a bread. That's what I did. So it's a pleasure to be in ye old Zendo again. And let's end with the chant. And maybe if Kozan is there, he could do, what do you call it again? The evening gata. So we can hear that last line again with that 2-syllable word.
Creation's
Numberless,
I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly and opportunity is lost. Let us awaken, awake and take heed. Do not squander your life.